Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back. I got a new video for you here. This one's going to be a bit different from the train modeling, however it is still train related. Every now and then I build modules for photos, and I take videos and stuff on them as well. I'm building a few right now where I'm doing a couple for my own photo work. I'm building a couple for my Westbrook model railroad scene, and it just so happened as I was doing this, a follower of mine requested that I could build him a module, and he basically wants a module for photo shooting just like I use. And so it's kind of been a little project of mine. I was originally not really planning on wanting to, but I decided, you know what, it'd actually probably be a good challenge, and for what he wanted it's pretty simple, so I decided to go ahead and do this. And I guess I wanted to make this video about really how to do a simple module like this. You know, a lot of people, especially professional modelers, you know, they use modules and stuff like that, not just their own personal layouts, to take videos and take photos of these cars. I mean, it's the best way to display them compared to setting them on a bar stool like I used to do, just setting them out in natural sunlight and taking photos of them, which is fine. I mean, if you want to have the full emphasis on the model, but building a module for your photos, it just adds a whole other level of realism to your modeling. I tell you what, it's done wonders for my work. I always use a module. Obviously I have built several, like I said, for different scenes, different shoots, different times a year, and of course I have my actual operating modules for my Westbrook layout. So again, you know, just trying to kind of I guess put my own ideas out there. Everybody wanted to kind of see how I do scenery and stuff like that, so I think this will be a good video on how to do some of this. So I wanted to kind of talk about what we're doing today. I have built a module. Yeah, we're not going to be showing bench work in this one. It's not going to happen. Basically, I'm going to be showing you guys step by step how I do scenic lay track, do scenic work, everything like that. That way we can build one of these. So that's kind of a rough explanation here, but that's basically what we're going to be doing, is building a module and doing the scenic work to it. So as you can see, I've already built a small little tabletop here, and you know, you can get pretty, you know, as fancy really or as simple as you want. This is simply built out of some plywood scrap that I had, some 2x4s and such, and you can see kind of the basic construction here of how I've basically done this. So it's essentially a simple little tabletop here, and the way I build these, you can essentially set them on a bar stool, a chair, or whatever, and they sit flat and you can take photos with them. So I've done some simple benchwork construction here like this, and it's a nice solid little table, so it's not going to wobble, it's not going to warp or anything like that. When the temperature changes, it's very, very solid, as you can see. So I like to have a good construction on all of my modules. I always try to build them like this, basically, so that they're nice and firm. So that's the most important thing when you're building a module. You know, again, I don't have a video of me actually building this thing, but as you can see, you know, it's very, very simple. You can do this with a few basic tools, basically a hammer or nails if you want, some wood glue, stuff like that. I just basically cut some 2x4s, attach them to some plywood. Very simple. So, that being said, again, what we're going to be focusing on is doing the scenery. I think this is the most important part of this, and this is the key to making these look realistic. So we're going to be talking about how to do scenic work on the module. So we'll go ahead and get started, guys. I think this will be a fun one. So as we look at this tabletop, obviously this is the planning stage here, and this is where I want to start this video off with. And it's all about planning when you build one of these things. Obviously you're thinking, what am I trying to accomplish when building this? What's your need? Are you trying to build an industrial kind of a module, where you have some industries you're going to switch out? As an example, I have several modules I've built that have industries that can be switched out, which I'll show at a later time. I don't have a good way of showing them right now, or setting them up, but you know, that's one thing you can do. I've built modules with mountain backgrounds where I basically have a foam background and then some trees and stuff to kind of blend in with the scenery. With modules like this, you basically take them outdoors and have them setting in kind of a rural area, and then you just basically rely on a real background to fill in the area behind, you know, the scenic piece. So in this case, what he wants is basically a small little staging yard with a road and some scenery. So it's a very, very simple, basically a little yard scene. So what the first thing I like to do is essentially take and go ahead and figure out how I want the track to be. So in this case, I've decided I wanted to basically build a 3-track staging yard. I have some Atlas Code 83 Flex, I believe, or no, I don't think this is Code 83, this is different, I forget what it is, but essentially at this point in time I figure out where I want everything. So in this case I want a road. So I basically would mark out the area where the road would be and then figure out where I want the track to be. So essentially I want the track to be about in the center. Now you consider 3 tracks. Obviously I'm going to have to cut these 2 pieces of flex that I have, and I'll basically use the scraps to make the 3rd track in the center here. But as you can see, you know, it's just a matter of spacing and figuring everything out like that. So what I essentially want here too with this track, what you see in yard tracks, usually the main track will be elevated higher than all the others. So this track's going to be on the ground, and then the second track, which will be on this side, will be up a little bit higher than this one, but not as high as this one, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to have elevated road bed, which I've cut some pieces out to do. I'm not going to be using cork road bed. I don't have any on hand. I'm just using the materials I have. So at this stage, what I'm going to go ahead and do is start figuring out where I want my track to go. So I'm going to basically take a straight edge. In this case, I'm going to be using this piece of wood road bed to go ahead and mark my locations for track. Then this is very important. Obviously, you want to have all this figured out and know exactly where everything is going. Get this just right. Remember, all your measurements now are going to be very crucial in the end. So I'm just going to go ahead, mark that first strip out, and that's basically going to be my guideline for laying out the track. This is where the track starts. The road's going to be out here, so we're going to start with that. And so essentially what I'm going to do is do this for all the sections of track, figuring out where they're going to go. So with the positions for the track basically marked out here, I'm going to go ahead and lay in the strip of wood to elevate the track here. In the center here, and I'm going to be using white latex caulk. I'm using a small bottle here, not too much, just because it's a small project. I don't need to go out and buy a whole, you know, tube of this stuff, but just enough to get the project in. So I like to just take a little bit like that, and then I simply take a straight edge or something like that, and basically just kind of spread it out just a little bit. So it's very, very simple, as you can see. Just enough. Obviously I wouldn't do it this way if I was building in a larger scale, but for what we're doing here, this is fine. It's just to get the glue spread out here very quickly. So we'll just spread it out a little bit. And if I zoom out here, you guys can kind of better see this. We have our wood strip like this, which can go ahead and add. And this will be our elevated road bed. Okay, so kind of had to do a quick change of plans here. I realized I wasn't going to be able to use that last bit of flex drag. It was kind of too short. So what I ended up doing, I had some scrap Bachmann Easy Track, and I know where this is where it gets kind of ghetto, but I essentially decided to make this the main line, this track 2, and this track 3, which would be the lowest to the ground. So it's the flex track is literally glued straight to the wood. The second track is elevated. The third track is the main track, and you can see it's elevated higher with the Bachmann Easy Track. So what we're going to essentially do, we're going to let this dry. It's all glued in place at this point. I'll go ahead and clean this up a little bit. Once it's dry, I'm going to go ahead and start painting this whole area, and we'll jump ahead and get ready for scenery. So it's been 4 hours now. The track's good and hard, as you can see. The silicone caulk dries pretty fast. So the track's nice and secure. We got the lower layer, top layer here, and then the highest level track here is all laid out, and so it's pretty much ready to go. So you have a couple options painting wise, but at this point in time, since this is a pretty basic module, we're ready for scenery, and this is where we're going to go ahead and jump into the detailed stuff here. So we need to go ahead and put a paint coat on this. Now there's a couple things you can do to do this. You can either hand paint this and then apply your scenery over it, or you can do what I do, which is spray paint it. In this case, I'm spray painting it because it's such a small area. I don't have any of the brown paint on hand that I used to. I used most of it up the last time I built some modules. So I got some Rust-Oleum paint here, and this is kind of a turf color here, and it'll also help us to paint the track because we need to paint these rails and everything. So we're just going to go ahead and basically paint all this the same color. I'm going to go ahead and start in this corner here with a quick even coat. Again, nothing too fancy here, just enough to cover it real fast. And then just start hitting up the rails here. Take your time with the track. If we need to go back and add more coats, we can. Okay, so I'm going to be using Woodland Scenic Scratch straight from the bag pretty much. And I'll go ahead and show you guys kind of what I'll be working with. I have a couple different things. So I'm using some Woodland Scenic medium buff ballast for the main road bed. So that'll be covering these 3 tracks here. I have fine turf, and this is what we'll be using to do the grass in certain areas. Unfortunately, I don't have any more clump foliage. I didn't get any while I had the chance, so we're just going to have to go without it for now. But that's something you may want to consider, is just a difference in coarse textures and stuff, and you know, from fine foliage to clumpier foliage, model some bushes like a grassy field like I've done a couple times. But for the most part, I'll be modeling kind of a mowed field here, so the grass will be kind of tame. And then I have another shaded ballast here, which we'll be doing a road with. So the road will be right here, and then we can kind of mix that in between. Now, what I like to do to start with is I always start with the ballast first before I do any kind of greenery or anything like that. The ballast is the most important part, so that's what we're going to start with first. So essentially we'll start with the ballasting here, and I'm going to start on the most important track here where we actually got to create the slope to match the contour of the Bachmann Easy track here. So what I like to do, you just simply start with a little bit of ballast at a time, and you essentially just create the sloped profile here, ignoring my dog barking upstairs. She always has a tendency to bark when I do these videos, so oh well. And then we'll just add a little bit of ballast into the sections of the ties here. Now, something else I'll go ahead and point out right away. When I see people do ballasting, they always overdo the inside of the track here and between the ties. The key with this is to only put a little bit of ballast at a time. That way it's easier to spread out. Otherwise, you're just working so much more ballast, and it just takes so much longer. So, once you apply the ballast, you can just kind of leave this here for a minute, and we'll just start kind of shaping this real fast. I'll show you guys kind of what I do. It's just a matter of spreading out the ballast between the cross ties in small little bits at a time. Remember, very small bits at a time. You don't just want to just throw it all in there. So, once I just basically fill in all these areas, we can keep moving here. But essentially, you're doing this for the entire bit of track here. And I will, of course, if any of this material falls off the edge, I'll collect it later. But right now, we're just worried about getting that profile. Generally, it's best, too, to work one way at a time with the brush and work the ballast down. That way you don't keep going back over areas you just worked in, essentially. So we're going to just basically repeat this process. I'll go ahead and start in another little area, and then we'll go ahead and start filling in the road bed in here. You guys can see that. I know the lighting's kind of crap. I'm doing the best I can here, but I don't have the best lighting for this. But it'll have to do. You guys get the basic idea here. So, once we've done that, essentially what I like to do is kind of just go along the edge with my thumb. Not a brush, just my thumb. And I like to just start kind of pressing away some of the ballast away from the ties, like this. And then I take my brush again, and just continue to kind of work it away from the ties. Remember, this is an important step in this process, so you really want to take your time and make this look nice. And then we can just basically push it away from the ties, like this. This is my favorite Led Zeppelin song, guys. This is such a good song. Bono's a killer drummer. There we go. So essentially that's your profile, though. You can see what we're going with here if we look at this. So essentially we're repeating this on both sides the whole time.